Welcome, everybody, to a special recording of Readings from Oconomowaukee. I'm Daniel Golder from Boswell. I'm joined by Lisa Ridzén from Books and Company and today's author. Um, you can find these recordings on by Googling Boswell Books and YouTube. And if you put Oconomowaukee in the search function there, you'll pull up all our conversations, some recorded online like this and some recorded in our bookstores. So with today's an introduction of today's featured guest, Lisa Bedoin. Hi.
Hi, thank you, Daniel. Welcome, Lisa. This is very exciting. Lisa Ridzén, I'm going to start over. Lisa Ridzén is a doctoral student in sociology, researching masculinity norms in the rural communities of Swedish far north, where she herself was raised and now lives in a small village outside of Östersund. When The Cranes Fly South was published in Sweden in January of 2024, it became a #1 bestseller and won the Swedish Book of the Year, as well as 2 Adlibris prizes for a debut novel and for Fiction of the Year, making it the first time an author has won in 2 categories. It is now an international bestseller. When The Cranes Fly South makes its American debut with lots of bookseller love as an indie introduced title and an indie next selection for August. Congratulations. What a whirlwind the past few years have been for you.
Thank you. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. Yes, it's been a bit of a hectic couple of years.
Well, do you want to start today with giving us a little, because it's going to be new for everybody, just a little reading from the book and get us in the space?
Mhm. So I was thinking I would read just the first couple of paragraphs. Um, yeah, to set a feeling about the book. I fantasize about cutting him out of my will, making sure he doesn't get a penny. He claims it's as much for my sake as Sixten's that he wants to take him away. That old men like me shouldn't be trudging about in the woods, and that dogs like Sixten need longer walks than a quick stroll to the road and back. I look down at Sixten, who's curled up beside me on the daybed. He lets out a big yawn and gets himself comfortable with his head on my belly. I dig my swollen fingers into his coat and shake my head. What does that idiot know, anyway? There's no chance in hell I'm going to let him get his own way.
Now, people often ask about inspiration for books based on your career. We might make some guesses as to how this book came together, but I'd love for you to talk about all the expected and unexpected ways that this book was inspired.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I study masculinity, and I'm currently doing a PhD on the topic. But I've always been interested in men and masculinity, and especially in, yeah, men that I grew up with and, they live in these areas where I live myself. But the actual seed for this book and this particular story came to me when I was down in my dad's workshop and I was looking through some boxes with stuff from my old granddad, and I found the like little books that the elderly care, the what do you call the care team that looked after my granddad, they write in little notebooks about the elderly people. And I found these where I like, there were just little sentences about my granddad's life, like if he's had his medicine and what he'd been doing that day, and short little things. And this was also very familiar to me because I've worked in the elderly care myself earlier. But while I was flickering through these short notes about my granddad's basically last 2 years of his life, the main character Bo just came to me, just appeared. And basically the full story as well. Like I just had to tell this story about an old man's perspective on life.
Yeah.
But so it's hard to really, pin down like this is the inspiration or so on. Like my husband says that, oh, well, you've always been a masculinity nerd and you've always been interested in people and so it's hard to know exactly what has inspired me, but I think my granddad is a great inspiration because we had a very close relationship. He passed 2010, 95 years old, but I looked after him, yeah, until his last days. So. And we talked about life and everything. And yeah, I can
Wow.
talk for ages
It's
about my
very
granddad.
personal then. Yeah, I love the idea of those books. I've got to say, my parents passed and there are no books. So
Yeah.
there's memories, but but I would never have gotten such detailed things like that. Anyway, Lisa, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say too, that did you take notes yourself during that time when you were spending with him and getting those stories? Did you record them?
I did actually interview him the last summer of his life. So he passed in September. And I was living in another town because I was studying at uni at the moment, or at the time. So I came back for the summer to hang out with my granddad because I knew that it was, getting towards the end of his life. And he was a very good storyteller, my granddad. So he was born 1915, a bit north from here, a totally different life to the life that I've had. But yeah, so I wanted to write down all the, everything that he's told me, and so that I will remember. And that was actually a very beautiful way of, saying goodbye in some ways. And my dad was like lurking around in the background, listening to everything we said, and he, said some things now and then and added to the stories. But yeah, it was very lovely. But Bo is not my granddad, like, but I'm inspired by the talks I had to my granddad.
All right. So effectively, I mean, this is all fictional and nobody's right, but nobody's the person it is, but you're Eleanor in a way. So
I'm Eleanor in a
did your
way, yes.
father say, "Am I Hans? Am I Hans?"
Well, I do have but both my father and my older brother, they got really nervous the first time I said that. Well, I've written a book about a man and his son and relationships between fathers and sons. They got a bit nervous, but no, they're not Hans or I'm inspired by all men and boys in my upbringing and in my life, pieces and bits here and there. Yeah. My granddad wasn't as grumpy as Bo can be.
Oh, I thought Bo's grumpiness was deserved. Like,
Oh, it
Yeah.
was.
but that's wonderful that even at the end of life, that your grandfather didn't have that. You write so well about. Obviously, this is where your research and experience comes in, is you just write so well about these complicated men's relationships. Did you find yourself, when you have so much more research than some people have when they're writing fiction? I was curious as to, while you're writing it, this is something historical fiction people have to deal with all the time. When your research tells you to go a certain way with the relationships, and your writing, your inspiration, your creativity wants you to go in a different direction. I said this question to Lisa beforehand. She's like, "What are you talking about?" But so I'm hoping you can make sense of it.
Yeah. I draw inspiration from both different ways of writing, right? When I write academically, you want to be very clear. You don't want it to be any, read in between the lines or anything like that. Like the reader should be, clear with what I'm saying here. And I want to be like, show this is the empirical stuff I have, and you know what. And I mostly write for the head. I want people to start thinking critically about men and masculinity, right? From a sociological perspective. But when I write fiction, it's quite the opposite. I'm writing for the heart and the soul, and I don't want to, I don't want to write too clearly what I'm trying to say, I want people to be able to fit in their own lives within the sentences. So, and this is very satisfying because I never get 100% satisfied with either of the writings, right? Like sometimes you just want to be very clear, and sometimes you just want the feelings to fill in the spaces. Or if that makes sense, I don't know.
I think it does. And you do so well at writing less to show us more. You have that, you don't, just state it all out. There's a lot of
Mm,
space where we can fill in or get the feels.
thank
And
you.
what I think too with your empirical information, is it more an exterior view of the people you're interviewing sense of their masculinity? And when you write fiction, you can sort of imagine what it would be like maybe inside, and you
Yeah,
have a little more
definitely.
freedom because that masculinity sometimes puts up a guard that
Yeah,
we have to
definitely.
assume
Um,
past.
yeah. And one goal that I had when I wrote about Bo was that I wanted the reader to feel like it was their body, like they were Bo, right? What does it feel to have a body that is aging? What does it feel to, have all of these feelings within you that you want to, communicate to your son or to your friend or whatever, but feeling, the constant issues with like not being able to articulate. And this is a pretty common stereotype among men that live in rural areas, both here in Sweden but also elsewhere, that you know the countrymen don't have as many vulnerable feelings and so on, and that they can't talk about feelings and so on. And I think that this is where my granddad comes in, right? We had a very like emotionally deep relationship, and he was very vulnerable with me, and we talked about everything, things that he didn't talk about with my father, for instance, or my brother. And this was something that I wanted to show through this, like you say, like through the eyes or the feelings and the sensations of Bo. And that is harder to do in research, academic writing. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense either, but that's how I thought about it. That like I'm quite tired of these stereotypical both in books but also movies and so on. Like I mean there's something to these stereotypes as well, right? Like yes, men that live here, they do hunt and they drive snowmobile and they use snooze and and they can be and 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 if I may get a bit um, serious as well, like they are overrepresented when it comes to mental health issues and suicide, and I think that that is connected to a lack of possibility of communicating certain feelings, but it's not the whole picture, right? These men are also extremely sweet, friendly, and like vulnerable and so on. And I think that those kind of images of men need to get out there more. Yeah.
I
One,
agree
oh, go ahead.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
I disagree 100% there. Now, Daniel.
I'm sorry. Well, one of the things is, it's about somewhat about relations. It is about relationships with men, but you specifically structured the book as letters to Frederick, the part that is in the journal says letters to Frederica. Sorry about
Mm.
I pronounced that wrong. So I'm curious, was that the original, was that your immediate idea, or did you come to that with a purpose and finding that it worked better afterwards? Do you know what I mean?
Well, it always, when I do interviews now, it sounds like I thought everything so well through before I started writing. But it was basically that way that Bo told the story, right? So, and I did try for a bit, like a chapter or two, where I tried to do it differently, but it didn't turn out that well, I reckon. So yeah, Fredrika had to be there because I also wanted to show that, our loved ones, even when they're gone, they're still so present, right? So everything, like Bo and Fredrika, they basically share their whole lives together, right? And you kind of become one one unit, even if the other one is gone. Like she's not dead, but she's basically dead to him, right? And yeah, so I wanted to show how we still can feel our loved ones like the presence when they're not there anymore. It's like with my granddad. So I live in my granddad's house. So we've been here for 7 years now, and I can still feel that he's here somewhere. When I go and collect the wood or I light a fire or, that he's here. And yeah, and I thought that maybe could get into the story, like that feeling, that we are our relations, right? We're not
Yeah.
just an individual. We become whole with other people, basically.
And the relationships that develop with the caretakers too are really unique and wonderful. And that's a system that we don't have here in the same way. So you want to talk a little bit about that for
Hmm.
those of us who didn't know or may not realize just how intimate that can be
Yeah.
for families.
Um, Writing about aging in a Swedish context would be impossible without including the home service, as we call it in Swedish. It's a type of care that everyone is entitled to. It's when you can't look after yourself, you might need help to put on like pressure socks or to clean or to have a shower, all of those fundamental basic needs. And most people get hemtjänst, home service. And it's different to other types of care because you care for the person in their homes, right? So when I worked in the home service, I was so fascinated by the fact that I got to go into people's lives. When you're at a hospital, right? Then they are in the hospital building. But here you come home to people, you meet their partners, their animals, often their children and neighbors and so on. And if you come from a place like where I live, where in the countryside, you often know, if you don't know them personally, you know of their grandkids because you went to school together and so on. So this, um, yeah, that brings like an intimacy between the carer and the elderly. But this is also under threats of, cutting, like when you, what do you call that? Tax cuts and so on. Like so, and it's a very undervalued work, and it's these days dominated by women and immigrants, and the pay is not very well either. So I wanted to show as well, like a beautiful, or beautiful, but I wanted to show what it's like working in the elderly care and how important it is. Because all of us value it to some extent, but we still don't really see how important and unique it is. And yeah, so I wanted that to be there as well. Oh, I feels like I'm just babbling now.
Oh, you're not. You're doing it's great because I think that it is so important and it adds quality and value to our communities and to growing old and giving that space to be together instead of
Yeah.
somehow making it go away as a community.
Yeah, and it's a good complement to like so my granddad had the home service as well for at least 3 or 4 years, the last 4 years of his life. And that meant that, they made sure that he had food and they came by like 4 times a day. But then he came down to our place because we lived just like next to each other in the same village, and he had dinner at our place. So it's a good complement to families, family support. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it was a lovely way to unfold the story of Bo himself,
Mm.
Daniel.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I also thought that sometimes when there's a too much white space in a book, and I think just trying to pad it out, but I felt like those pauses, that separating them out on pages structurally, and I don't know how it looks on an ebook, and I don't know how you would deal with this on an audio, which so many people, but the when you're reading it and like there's this pause when you get to the caregivers, and I thought that whoever had come up with it, whether it was your idea or somebody else's, it worked really well in the reading.
Oh,
So
thank you. That makes me happy. I guess it was like um, a, a, a technique to make it also seen from a different perspective than Boo's, right?
right.
That sometimes Boo would experience a situation in one way, but then maybe through the eyes of the carers, you got to see that, oh, well, yeah, maybe that's not the whole picture. And yeah, and that it's hard. Like, what does it mean to age with dignity, right? It's not easy.
Oh, and you really just bring it so much to life. I mean, I was reading the book and I don't know if this is what I was supposed to get about it, but like, am I gonna wear my nappies? Am I gonna resist? Am I gonna resist
Yeah.
wearing my nappies? Or I guess now I feel like I gotta wear my nappies, but they can look pretty nice. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll get those more sophisticated nappies. This was a distraction that maybe you're not supposed to have reading the book, but it's an indication of how much you bring the reader into the story.
Mm.
And I will say one thing I was really surprised about was that the caregivers weren't really supposed to walk the dog. So we're going to transition to the animal relationship because I thought surely in a sophisticated country like Sweden, they would understand how important the dog is to well-being. And I'm sure you've come across that in your research too. And it's almost one of the major points of this book is that the relationship with Sixten is just so strong and so important.
Yeah.
Talked about that, please.
Sixten is, I would say, probably, yeah, it's Bo's closest friend, right? Ture is also his best friend, but since they can't see each other, they only talk on the phone. Sixten is definitely the closest person to Bo. And I mean, Ingrid from the home service, she definitely thinks that it's included in her job. While, some others that are a bit more stressed. And this is one of the like the debates in Sweden that, that they cut funding for the home service and they don't have time anymore to sit down with the elderly or, do these things that may not be included, but that, should be included and so on. But I grew up with dogs myself, and I have a dog, Possum, a golden retriever, and I'm I'm that kind of person who I find people very interesting, but I I rather hang out with dogs. No, not always, but a little bit like that. And it's hard for me not to include dogs and animals in stories about people, right? And like you said, it's very common here to have dogs, and especially as hunting partners. And so yeah, for me it's hard to write without including a dog, yes.
and was a great character and a great relationship between the two of them too throughout the whole story. And do you think, though, I mean, it was also a vehicle to kind of showcase Hans' grief and how he wasn't dealing with his grief by trying to control the situation. And I think you did a beautiful job in shifting the perspective and our assumption as a reader, the relationship between the two of them and how it becomes more tender towards the end. You want to talk
Yeah,
about that transition and how Sixten kind of played the lightning rod for that?
yeah. Hans definitely he's he's doing the best he can, right? They're
Yeah.
all trying the best they can. And sometimes that's enough, and sometimes it's not, right? And I think that for Hans, because this is in many ways a story of three generations of masculinity, right? So I wanted to show, I guess, from a sociological perspective, the changes, how we are so affected by what we come from, right? Historically, from our fathers in this sense and mothers, but also by society in general. So what freedom is for Bo is something different to what freedom is for Hans. And for Hans, it's so important to be a good son, right? He wants to look after his dad. He comes and visits his dad very often, and he's very present. But yeah, it clashes. And one thing for him is to control everything. He wants to control it so he can make it good for his father. Um, but it's not what Bo needs every time. But sometimes it is, and sometimes they reach each other. But it's just so hard for them. It was frustrating. I must say that it was frustrating sometimes. I was like, oh, just get it out. You just tell him that you're proud of him.
Are you saying that sometimes your characters were doing things you didn't want them to do?
Oh, yes. It's it's interesting, huh? And like you were saying earlier, Dan, I'm Eleanor, and I've definitely had that with my granddad and with my dad and my brother, but also other men, where I feel like I get information from them and then I pass it on. Like my granddad would say that so my dad was a lonely, no, what do you say, the only kid. And my granddad was, he could tell me that he was so proud of my dad and everything he's done and blah, blah, blah. He's so good at building and da, 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 da. But he would not tell my dad. And then I would tell my dad, and my dad would like get a bit like, oh, and yeah, and that can be frustrating, but it is also, you have to think about like how strong these norms are, like socialization and I kind of wanted that to be present in the book as well, that yes, we are very affected by social norms, and it is really hard to change the way that you've been raised, because Bo himself had a really harsh dad, and compared to him, he did a really good job, I reckon.
And then you see the relationship between Hans and Eleanor, and there's just some moments of just, it's almost like a blink in the eye tenderness that
Mm.
reaffirms that, Hans it is changing generationally, generational progress.
Yeah, exactly. And to
Yeah.
the extent where Bo can feel a bit like, oh, it's just too much. Like, we get it. And Eleanor can be so like, she's very articulated when it comes to feelings and yeah, he gets a bit embarrassed.
It's
I
it's
was
such
going
a
to ask
wonderful.
you, oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. No, you ask the question.
Well, I'm going to jump off point of talk a little more about the relationship with Bo and Tour. Just it's such a, it's interesting, it's a different kind of friend. It's a friendship and it's in some ways different because of who Tour is, but in some ways it's very classic because they really don't ask to don't it's all like activities and just time spent together, but not too
Yeah.
internal. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah. So through Ture, I wanted to show how, like we were saying earlier, that we are our relationships, right? And different relationships bring out different sides of your personality. And Ture really makes Bo bloom, right? He's a type of masculinity that he had never met before until he met Ture. And he brings some kind of relaxedness and playfulness to Bo's life. And he has fun with Ture. They have a lot of fun. And they don't talk about everything, but they do talk more than he does with other people. But towards the end of the book, I don't want to spoil too much, but towards the end of the book, Bo finds out something about Ture, and he finds out about an old relationship that Ture had, and he was like, "Why didn't he tell me about this?" And he started to critically investigate his own role in this, like, why, what was it in me that made Ture not say this? And then he kind of uses that feeling to look at Hans and like, I need to do something about this. And yeah, so I can't remember what you asked now, but that's
It
that's
was more of a
how I
jumping
thought.
off question, so it could go in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the relationship too, because it includes Hans and it gives Hans a sense of a different way too, to have that, to be included in their camping trips and to be
Mm,
included in that relationship. So you do so much in such a little bit of time. And there's, for I think, families to read, for book groups to read, there's so much to open up and talk about in ways that you wouldn't unless the book was both read and you can use it as a way to kindly get into other spaces. So I appreciate it so
thank
much for
you.
that. I mean, it just, I was saying that, and then, like I was talking about my mom and talking about the book, and we had so much conversation afterwards
Oh, that
about
makes me
things
so happy.
we may not have had unless we had a starting point.
Mm. Oh, that's so beautiful. It's yeah, that makes me really happy. Because I think that many people feel like there are certain things or questions or thoughts they have when it comes to their parents aging, for instance, or aging yourself. And it's good to have these conversations, right? I think that that makes us feel better
Mhm.
and feel more connected. Um, and also talking about death and dying. Like Sweden is a very secular society, right? So it's, and with the church getting less and less space, within your everyday life, all of these existential questions and stuff, kind of have a tendency to not take place in everyday conversations. And I think that I think that we can feel that as a society. We get scared of dying and we don't want to talk about it. We just push it off and yeah, I think we need to talk about that more. How do you want to die? How do you want to age? And yeah.
Just one more tour question, which was I'm going to go off on a less weepy note that we have to say. I was going to say, was saying before is like when people ask what genre do you read, I was like, I guess I read a lot of the weepies. I like emotional. I mean, I like emotional catharsis in all kinds of ways, and I feel like this book,
Hmm.
as do seemingly a lot of people, and they also like crying on social media videos. So I'm sure you've already had a lot of that in many languages. Um, but I want to talk about Jura's collection of, and I'm not going to pronounce this right, the Storjo monsters. Um,
Oh, it's Storsjö.
Especially
Yeah.
because more Wisconsin is a very cryptid crazed state.
Mm,
And there's actually a decent Swedish population in some of the cities here.
mm.
Um, so so I'm just curious, do you have them? Like how obsessive are people in Sweden with them? Do you have
Yeah, so there is a the biggest lake here nearby is called the Big Lake. And it's the fifth biggest lake in Sweden. And some people say that this is a myth, but all of us who live here, we know that there is a big lake monster in the lake. And so writing about this area, Jämtland, as the county is called, it I needed to include that as a way of, blinking, what do you say, flirting with my fellow Jämtlänningar. Um, but it's also kind of a, or some people have read it as a symbol for Ture's queer identity. That this becomes like yeah, like a symbol for a different way of living and doing life than what was normal when he grew up, and the normative way of doing life. Um, yeah, but I've seen the Big Lake Monster several
oh,
times.
wonderful. How does it compare for those who haven't seen? Of course, everybody's going to go look it up afterwards, but how does it compare to so like the Loch Ness Monster? Is it
It's quite similar to the Loch Ness Monster, yeah. But it's like monster is kind of it's a bit mean. It's a very lovely monster. He's
oh, okay?
sweet and nice, and he would never do anything mean. He just tickles your feet every now and then when you go for a swim.
That's good to hear. Probably a vegetarian too.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, um, do you have any other questions? Are you working on anything right now? It seems like you have other books published.
I'm working on a new book, but it's not. I don't know when it's gonna be out, but it's. I can say that it's you're gonna re as a reader you'll recognize the context. It sets place here in Jämtland, but this time I'm focusing on younger people and younger boys.
Okay. Well, we know that the book has been obviously a worldwide hit. We first publisher was pushing it. Our sales rep Jason is always a champion of great literature. We Lisa and I were lucky enough to host Frederick Bachman earlier this year,
Mm.
who we asked about, and of course he gave you a wonderful blurb, and he talked about the book at his program. It's been, I mean, it's really been just one big Swedish festival in Wisconsin this year. We had a psychologist from Stockholm
Uh-huh.
who came to give a talk on the sense of smell. And I was like, what are you doing here? He married a woman from Wauwatosa, the area. So
Oh, there you go.
Jonas Olafsson, very interesting talk. So,
Oh,
Yeah,
and if you
Frederick
ever,
Bachman had lovely things to say. He was very excited that we were going to be able to do this and
oh.
that we liked the book so much.
Yeah, I'm so happy. For me, it was pretty surreal because I've read Fredrik's books, right? Of course, and he's a massive writer. So for me, it was just a bit surreal that he was actually giving a quote about the book, and yeah, I'm so thankful for that. And yeah, it's a big honor.
well, I think it sounds like when Lisa said, "Do you have any more questions, Daniel?" She meant to say, "I don't have any more questions." I meant to say,
Well,
"I
I do.
you
I'm just
do."
looking
Oh,
at
you're
the
so
time. I
kind.
could just like talking.
Yeah, we are okay. I take that back. So,
Well, I'm looking, so I was hoping, and I
oh,
was
you're
got so
like you
involved.
need a
I got
time
so
killer.
involved. I know. I just was running through my list. Do you have another question, Daniel?
I, I took, as you said, I read the book twice. I took so much notes. I found it so emotionally compelling and But I feel like I love, a lot of the things I would be saying are sort of duplicating. One of the things I noticed that you mentioned in the book, and I bet that came from your studies, is contradicting this idea that women are the gossipers in life. And I love when you say, how the men love to gossip with each other. They just kind
Yeah,
of frame it a little differently. Um, was
exactly.
was there anything else in your that like you're writing a story, but you want to make a few points? Was there any other like points from your studies you're like, people think about this wrong, and I've done all this work and I'm going to kind of hint at it in my story? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that, when I was writing this story, I just wrote it. I didn't really think
Yeah.
that clearly about different, goals or aims or so on. But I wanted it to be clear, the complexity of being a human, right? That nothing is either or, black or white, and nice or stupid, like it's it's always a mix of a whole bunch of structures, norms, feelings, and so on. So, and that's why it's so hard to be a human being. It's not easy. And I wanted that to be clear, definitely. So probably that was the main focus, as I was creating the different characters. And I'm really happy that you that you said that about gossiping, because that is definitely my experience about growing up in the countryside, that not only women gossip, but they call it different things, right? My dad loves gossip more than my mom.
Human nature. I do have now, Lisa, now I'm on fire. No, I have one more question. And then I'm going to Lisa for every other question. There's definitely two parts of writing. There's the inspiration, the first draft, but there are multiple drafts and there are things that you change in books. And so you have a moment. We had an author who said, she realized after she wrote the book that there were all these fairy tale references, and her editor said, put some more, let's go with that. Let's make it sort of a theme. Was there anything that you added or took out that changed the book after your first draft?
Nothing like major. But the one thing that I did, because my Swedish publisher, he said that he wanted to know more about Bo's background. So the first draft was more focused on the present and like his experience of his everyday life. And then he was like, but try to write a couple of chapters about, yeah, his background. So I tried to deepen the story through or by telling, showing his relationship to his own father and how he met Ture and Fredrika and so on. And that was really fun because then I got to know Bo even more. And yeah, so yeah, I think that
Okay.
was the.
Yeah.
And that really adds to the novel too. That really strengthens knowing his experience as a kid with a father, and then how it equipped and didn't equip him to become a father.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, it was. I'm glad that you added those in. How's it when the books are being translated? What's it like working with a translator, and do you have much interaction with them?
Some I do. It's very different in different countries. But some translators have a lot of questions about particular words or more cultural specific aspects, where some translators never have any questions. So it's very different. And I mean, I can the English one I've read through before it was published, but and also like Danish and Norwegian I can read because it's so similar to Swedish. But otherwise the other languages I don't, I can't really say anything about their particular words and so on. So, but yeah, it differs between
Yeah.
different
I would
countries.
assume that in some ways the English is particularly important because so many Swedish people, according to what I've heard, actually read in Swedish. And so I think you're translating
Mm,
Alice Menzies. I mean, like she had sort of a greater, like she had more work, like, because I'm guessing since you haven't, I've heard of translations where someone who's read in both languages says, translation was good, but I'm not sure if they caught the book. Like there's certain,
yeah, yeah,
like details that they'll leave out or something like that, or change the tone,
yeah,
something like that. So that
yeah.
I'm sure the English, did you have to change anything on that? Or did you just,
There were some things that we talked about because the story is very local, right? And the Swedish version, there are a lot of words or some words that are influenced by this local language that used to be spoken here. And there's also some words from indigenous Sami cultures that are specific to this area, Jämtland, that is South Sami land as well. So those kind of things got a bit tricky sometimes, how to translate and so on. But I think she did a really good job, and yeah, and also my agent read through the English draft several times, and we discussed certain things.
I mean, that's interesting too to know that there's words that can't be translated. And then there's a whole
Yeah,
history that goes with that feeling. And now I'm curious of all those words that were there and
yeah,
that
yeah,
history too. Yeah. That's a whole little pamphlet afterwards.
yeah. Yeah, it's like I'm so impressed by translators because that is not an easy job
Yeah.
to translate, and you have to have a lot of knowledge about the culture and so on. But yeah, I'm very pleased with Alice's work.
Yeah. And you make reference, I think, in the book too, don't you, about Eleanor reading in English or having
Yeah,
phrases in English and how
yeah,
frustrating it was for Bo to have that happen.
yeah. Yeah, Bo would not be able to read this book in English. Um, And that is definitely the situation. Like younger people, we read and we watch TV shows, often from America or England. So English is definitely becoming more and more used, whereas the older generations don't use it as much. But even if we use English a lot, it's still like it's very different to Swedish, right? Like that's your heart's language. So I definitely prefer reading in Swedish, because it goes straight to my heart, right? It's different. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that we should continue reading in Swedish and translating as well.
And we're always envious here for our monoculture, our monolanguage of you having multiples, and it does add such an enrichment to one's life.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
My husband is Australian, so he learned Swedish when he moved here. And my dad, he understands English, but he not. It's restricted his English. So, and my husband said that it wasn't until he learned Swedish that he really got to know my dad, right? It's it's important language.
It is very much. Daniel,
oh no, I'm out of questions.
you're out of questions. Should we ask about, and we didn't give a warning, is there anything that you're reading right now or you're recommending to all your friends?
Hmm. I should have something on top of my
And it
mind.
doesn't have to have been published here. Maybe
Yeah.
your inspiration will get it published here.
Mm. Yeah, I'm reading a lot of in the indigenous female Sami writers at the moment. There's been so many books lately. So Elin Anna Labba, I know her what is it called in English? Uh sto oh God, I can't remember the English title now because I'm reading it in Swedish. The Elin Anna Labbas latest. She won the August Prize for her first book, and she's just come out with um a new novel. Um, Far inte till havet, it's called in Swedish. My brain is. I can look this up actually.
I'm looking up the August Prize while we're talking.
Ja, jag bara ja. English title.
But
Nej. Home of the Drowned. Home
Oh,
of the Drowned. Um, it's a very powerful, like family saga. She was inspired by her own relatives and how, yeah, how they, because that's a massive thing with like when Sweden started to build dams, a lot of Sami communities got flooded basically, and their land was destroyed. And her family, that happened to her family, and she's writing about that. So that's a book recommendation.
okay.
Elin Anna Labba, Home of the Drowned.
we
Should come
just
out soon.
we just did an event with an author who writes about a river being dammed and the effects
Mm.
on the community and the peach orchard. So
Oh,
yeah,
It
mm.
was a river, yeah.
yep, it was good.
All right.
All right. Well, this has been lovely.
Yes.
Congratulations. Uh,
Yeah.
this event goes live on pub date, August 19th in the United States. And we're so excited to share this book with readers all over the country. Thank you for
Thank
all the
you.
work.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, like I say, it's going to bring out so many conversations. It's going to be great.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all your amazing job
Oh,
you're doing.
And
likewise.
yeah, likewise. And we look forward to the next one.
Oh, thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Bye.